Welcome back to another episode of Rock Boys Football. Brent Venables, the Oklahoma Sooners continue to work their way through spring practice. And you know this personally because I've been texting you a lot over the last couple of weeks. From what I'm hearing in spring practice from Oklahoma, it has to give you so much confidence in terms of what this team can be in the 2025 year. Now, the national media will start with John Mateer, Ben Arbuckle coming in, which, look, that's a massive storyline, right? You look at the two most important parts of an offense. It's who's your quarterback, who's calling the plays. I don't think people realize I think people realize the upgrade that Oklahoma's getting at the quarterback spot with John Mateer. I don't think people realize the upgrade that Oklahoma's getting at the offensive coordinator spot with Ben Arbuckle. I'm not all surprised to hear John Mateer being a guy for Oklahoma, but the other question marks we have, we're starting to get some answers to. I mean, going into spring practice, is this wide receiver room good enough in the SEC? What's the offensive line going to be like in 2025? We're starting to get some answers. And I'm not saying we have all the answers sitting here in March 30th, but from what you're hearing coming out of spring practice, you feel way more confident in this offense sitting here right now than you did 12 months ago. Want to get into some more storylines that you're kind of hearing, come out of Oklahoma scrimmage that they had on Saturday, which sounds to have been very competitive, high energy. This is the time in spring practice where guys start to separate, and you're starting to hear some players separate themselves on this Oklahoma roster. Fired up to get into it. Before we do, and as always, to the Oklahoma fans, appreciate you guys. Many of y'all know this. It's been so fun talking this program during spring practice. The amount of support the Oklahoma fans have shown the boys has been amazing. Appreciate you guys. If y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. Without further ado, let's get into it. Dill, I want to start with two things real quick. Number one, I think every Oklahoma fan who's dialed in to spring practice knows that this offense just looks and feels different. I think that large part has to do with John Mateer and Ben Arbuckle. One of the other story, and look, this is not me trying to skip over John Mateer. We've talked a ton about John Mateer over the last 2 weeks. I think we all know that he's going to be a difference maker for Oklahoma. Here's one of the storylines that excites me, Dale. This wide receiver room. I got to put my hand up and just say I was wrong. Like when they brought in Giovanni Gibson, I thought to myself, is that a needle mover move? Is that the wide receiver that Oklahoma needed to kind of revamp this room? Hey, that's why I'm sitting here in my basement. That's why Brent Venables and this staff get paid the big bucks, because it sounds like they hit. Every time you open up spring practice, whether it's just spring practices, whether it's the scrimmage that we heard about on Saturday, Giovanni Gibson is a difference maker. Then Deion Burks, we all know what he can do. And then Isaiah Satangian here, you mentioned something that I think's kind of intriguing. Isaiah Satangian, Deion Burks, they have kind of similar games. But I think the versatility that Deion Burks brings to this wide receiver room allows you to get all three of these wide receivers on the football field, where it's sounding like these are the three wide receivers that are clearly the difference makers in this Oklahoma offense.
And that's where, that's kind of because that's how Deion Burks was used last year. But obviously, I think given the limitations for that Oklahoma offense in general, I think maybe even I'm almost forgetting what he was at Purdue, where
Agreed.
He was lined up a fair amount on the boundary, was able to get downfield and make plays down the field, was able to run good, clean routes against boundary cornerbacks and get himself open. He can dominate at the slot position for sure. We all know he can do that. He was really good there for Oklahoma. But it's let's not forget what he was at Purdue, where he was much more used on the boundary and really, really effective. Because Isaiah Satangian, I don't really see him as a boundary wide receiver. I don't know that he has the athleticism, the juice necessarily.
Oh, I think he has the juice. Yeah, I think you're right. People forget about the track and field background that Isaiah Satangian had out of high school. It's just that he's the ideal spot for him is playing that slot wide receiver spot. Really good short area quicks, really good with the football in his hands. This is when it helps to be a multidimensional wide receiver where, hey, I can be really good in the slot if you need me, but I can also be really damn good out there on the boundary too. It allows you to get your next best football player on the field, which is Isaiah Satangian. Dill, three weeks ago, as we were kicking off spring practice, I had massive question marks if the talent around John Mateer was going to be good enough. This is what happens when you bring in an elite quarterback. Everybody just gets a little bit better. And I feel like that's what you're seeing within this Oklahoma offense. Now, the other big storyline is the offensive line rotation. Dill, you're hearing the Oklahoma offensive line. Look, the defensive line is the better unit in spring practice. It was the better unit in the scrimmage. That's not all that surprising. I think this Oklahoma defensive line might be one of, if not the best unit in the country. Last year, 12 months ago, all you heard was like they could barely have a practice because the defensive line was just like that good. And obviously the offensive line struggled. In 2025, you're hearing better things about the offensive line, quote unquote, holding their own, which I think should be encouraging. Look, I don't think there's a single Oklahoma fan that would expect this Oklahoma offensive line to win the day against this Oklahoma defensive line. But the fact that it's not utter domination, I think should intrigue Oklahoma fans. And what I'll say here is right where we are in spring practice now compared to 12 months ago, you have more pieces of the puzzle right now. 12 months ago, we didn't have a damn clue what the starting five would be. And now you're sitting here in spring practice and say, all right, we feel really good about Troy Everett at center. We feel really good about Fabechi and Eddie Pierre-Louis at the guard spot. You feel really good about the interior offensive line in general for Oklahoma. Now we got to figure out the tackle position. I think most notably, Dale, Jacob Sexton getting a lot of work at left tackle. Sounds like he's doing pretty well. I think it comes down to the tackles.
And that's the one I'll be looking at. And Jay Taylor for sure, too. I mean, certainly didn't have the year he probably would have wanted to have last year.
Yep.
But Jacob Sexton, he's like the one I wonder, like, does he have it at left tackle? Can he be your left tackle in an SEC offense? And I know he dealt with some injuries last year, but he didn't really answer that question. I don't
Agreed.
think. Obviously, he really struggled. I do wonder how that position battle is going to shape up if they ever go to anything in the spring portal window. That's the question to me because, again, I can hear what I hear from this spring practice, but we've seen a fair amount from Jacob Sexton, and it hasn't been
I'm
good.
not trying to be a sunshine pumper, but if I were to say something that should encourage Oklahoma fans, it's that we're seemingly doing a lot less mix and matching. Like you go back and read the fall camp notes and spring practice notes last year, it's like Jacob Sexton working at guard, Jacob Sexton working at tackle, Jake Taylor at guard, Jake Taylor at tackle. I feel like it's, hey, we're picking some positions and we're going to let it ride. And you're going to either figure it out or not play. But we're done doing the mixing and matching and trying to shuffle it. It was like desperation last year. We're just going to throw something at the wall and hope it sticks. I feel like now they have a better sense of what the offensive line rotation is going to be. That should help this unit going into 2025. It's going to remain a question mark until we see this football team on the field. But I feel like you're hearing better things than you heard 12 months ago from the offensive line. And quite frankly, the quality of player is better. It sounds like Derek Simmons is way further along than a guy like Spencer Brown. Michael Fasusi has a real shot at playing for Oklahoma. Ryan Foji as well. You're hearing better things from the offensive line. Dill, here's my last question mark that I still want to see get answered from Oklahoma in spring ball here. Who wins the running back one job? Look, this is time for DeMarco Murray to figure this running back room out, in my opinion. You have recruited the position well. It is full of blue chip talent. Who's going to be the running back that, for lack of better terms, grabs the bull by the horns and goes and takes this job? You go back to 2024, and I get the running back play was not great, but it had a lot to do with the offensive line just not being able to run the football. Last year, it felt like they were just searching. They were just throwing a running back out there and kind of hoping they'd get hot. I feel like this year you want to come out of spring practice, come out of fall camp with like, hey, that's our guy. This guy has separated himself from the pack. This is the guy we want to ride in 2025.
And that's where I'm not even sure I totally agree with your take on it. I think Xavier Robinson did kind of grab the bull by the horns.
But he didn't get on the field enough then. I mean, if he did, then why didn't he play more?
It took till the end of the year, but you go look at that Alabama game, you look at the way he was running the ball.
Yeah,
that to me is like, yeah, that's good, hard, tough running that Oklahoma needed. And they were not getting that from the rest of that unit. Taylor Tatum is kind of the X factor because if he doesn't fumble the ball as much, he probably might be the running back one. So, like, he'll be the guy to look out for. Can he figure out the fumble woes? But to me, Xavier Robinson, in terms of just straight up dependability, the ability to run hard and run tough and just grind things down or grind it out a little bit, I think he kind of showed what I think I would have wanted to see from him.
I agree with you. To me, and I think from what I've seen in the comment section, what I've seen on the message boards, the Oklahoma fans agree with you too. Like Xavier Robinson is the guy I think was the most impressive back as a true freshman last year. Then maybe it's up to DeMarco Murray. But I guess what I'm trying to get at here is I want to see a guy get featured. I want to see a guy separate because I just feel like even though it seemed clear that Xavier Robinson was that dude, we didn't really see that from a workload standpoint. I want to see it from a workload standpoint as well. Going to the defensive side of the football, Dill, it's our guy, man. It's our guy, Grayson Halton. He's not only the most underrated player in this Oklahoma team by far. He's one of the most underrated players in all of college football. Like even the Oklahoma fans who follow this program pretty damn closely. I'm going to say something that probably surprises you. Who led this team in quarterback hurries last year according to PFF? And it wasn't Ethan Downs, wasn't our Mason Thomas. It was Grayson Halton on the inside, 24 quarterback hurries. Now, what I love about this defensive line, and we don't need to talk about it that much because I've talked about it at length. The Oklahoma fans know that. Love the balance. Dominic Williams, Jaden Jackson. Does it get better in terms of run stopping interior defensive linemen than those two? Probably not. Okay, so we're going to stop the run on first and second down. And then we go to third and long. Does it get better than a guy like Grayson Halton has just a ton of pass rush juice on the inside? And you're hearing all the right things about Davis Stone taking that step going into year two. Not only the amount of good players that Oklahoma has on the defensive line, but just as importantly, the varied skill sets that Oklahoma has. That to me should excite the Oklahoma fans the most. And I look for this front seven in general to take over football games for Oklahoma in 2025.
And that's because, again, I look at both the linebacker spot, I look at the defensive tackle spot of that front seven unit. Love both of them.
Yeah.
For me, it's going to be the edge rusher room and somebody besides our Mason Thomas being really, really consistent. Because, again, you've seen really good things from PJ. You've seen really good things from Marvin Jones, albeit in very limited form up to this point. Those are two guys who I look like if they just can play down and down out and play solid football. Like both of them have the talent. So I look, you feel really good that you're bringing back an our Mason Thomas who really started to dominate last year. And I think that was kind of a big thing for Oklahoma. Now it's going to be who's going to be next to him and just give you more dependable reps because you've seen way too much
The ceiling of this Oklahoma defense, I feel like, lies with Marvin Jones Jr., PJ, and Danny Okoye. Like three super freaky dudes. You know, Marvin Jones Jr. and PJ, both former five-star prospects. They've been solid, but they haven't been all that consistent. Can one or both of them or all three of them emerge and kind of reach their potential in the 2025 year? Because if you get that, you're just not going to see many better front sevens across the country. And go look at Penn. I'm not saying Oklahoma's going to win a national championship in 2025, but go look at the past national championship teams. Ohio State was number one in the country in sack percentage last year. Like Jeremiah Smith got all the national media attention. That defensive line was freaking elite. Go back to Michigan in 2023. And it's an NFL defensive line. Go back to Georgia 2022, Georgia 2021. NFL defensive line, to me, I don't think am I crazy to think this Oklahoma defensive line can kind of be that caliber in 2025? I don't think I'm crazy.
If two of those three edge rushers really lock it down and start playing consistently, they're going to be right up there with anyone in the country. Because the D tackle room, it's going to be really hard to find anyone better than that.
And I'm with you at the linebacker spot. I'm already getting pissed off, and it's early in the offseason. Like the amount of times I'm listening to people talk about Oklahoma and say they don't have Danny Stutzman, this linebacker is going to suck.
You knew that was coming.
But you all know I'm a Danny Stutzman guy. This ain't have nothing to do with Danny Stutzman. I got a Danny Stutzman shirt hanging in my closet. I ain't even an Oklahoma fan. But this linebacker room, I think, is going to be just fine. In fact, I think it's going to be pretty dang good, especially with Brent Venables kind of running this defense.
And you're seeing the way Kip Lewis and Kobe McKenzie have gotten better over the past 2 years. I think is wildly encouraging, especially Kip Lewis. I think he's really kind of ready to slot in there and take that Danny Stutzman production and make.
And I don't even know if they're the two best. I think Kendall Danis might be the best linebacker in this room. I love Kendall Danis, and I love what you're hearing. And I have him listed in my too deep right now just because I don't really know what they're going to do with him. He's going to play. He's going to play a lot, and he's going to be a difference maker for Oklahoma. Last thing I'll note. I was a little bit concerned about the depth of the secondary. I ain't that concerned anymore. You're hearing great things from Michael Boganowski. You're hearing great things from Jaden Hardy. You're hearing really good things from the true freshman Cortland Guillory, who sounds like he's taking some first team reps, like kind of like an Eli Bowen Part 2, like a true freshman that we did not expect to play a lot in his first year. Sounds like he's going to play a lot. And so this Oklahoma defense as a whole, I think, should be really freaking.
And then getting Dolby back, I don't think that should be understated because Kendall Dolby was a monster before he got injured last year. I think he's like really perfect fit for what they're trying to do at that cheetah spot. And I think he'll make a big difference for this team going forward.
I agree. We'll close it out there. Appreciate you guys rocking with it. Super intriguing team. And we say this all the time. It's like the variance of results are pretty big, but the ceiling's really high. And Dill, I'm starting to think that floor is starting to raise. The more I hear about the wide receivers being better, the more I hear about the offensive line potentially not being a liability like it was in 2024, the higher this team's floor gets, but the ceiling remains really freaking high. We'll close it out there. Appreciate you guys rocking with it. If y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. We'll talk to y'all later.